Federal government is giving a directive to officials of government on cutting down on travels and costs of running government, a move by the Buhari government to cut costs, an austerity measure. And the federal government and the labor unions continue with negotiation over minimum wage to avert a looming workers' industrial action. We hope to hear their final agreement tonight. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbale. Let's begin tonight with the news that President Buhari has approved the appointment of aides to the First Lady, Mrs. Aisha Buhari. The aides are Dr. Meiro Al-Makura, who is going to be serving as Special Assistant on African First Lady's Peace Mission to the wife of the president. Also, Muhammad Al-Bashir, Special Assistant on Organization of African First Ladies for Development. Wale Abodere, Special Assistant on Non-Governmental Organizations. Aliyu Abdullahi, Special Assistant on Media and Publicity. Zainab Kazim, Special Assistant on Domestic and Social Events. Funke Adesina, Personal Assistant on Domestic and Social Events. The appointments, according to the presidency, take immediate effect. Let's now check out some other political stories to follow in for you now. Political Roundup.
The Independent National Electoral Commission today had an interactive session with the political class and other stakeholders in Bayelsa State. The event, which had the INEC chairman and other dignitaries in attendance, ended abruptly during the discussion session as some politicians began to engage in a war of words. The Action Democratic Party is alleging that the request by the federal government to the National Assembly seeking approval for the release of over 10 billion naira to the Kogi State government is only an attempt to rig the election ahead of the November 16 poll. Addressing a news conference in Abuja ahead of the party's non-elective convention, the national chairman of the party, Mr. Yabaji Sani, said the request by the president is a deliberate attempt to empower the Kogi State governor in order to ensure his victory at all cost.
The president will have the audacity to request National Assembly to give them 10 billion to spend. It's daylight robbery as far as I'm concerned.
The Nigerian government must work effectively with all stakeholders to ensure the removal of identified hurdles against effective women participation in politics. This forms part of the recommendations of a group of researchers and technocrats who monitor the 2019 general elections, spearheaded by the Nigerian Women Trust Fund. At the book presentation titled Women's Participation in 2019 General Elections from an Accountability Perspective, Kanu and Oyo under Spotlight, the groups recommend that security agents must re-strategize to assist election managers to curb vote trading and electoral violence. Concerned groups in Plateau State are calling on the state government to revisit its appointment of Transition Management Committee chairmen in 4 local government areas of the state. Expressing their views at different forums, the groups describe the appointment of the ruling party's candidates at local government elections as a new level of bias and injustice which lacks neutrality and sensitivity on the part of the government and can lead to truncating the relative peace being experienced in the state. The Taraba State Governor, Darius Ishaku, says his administration will reform civil service in the state to expunge mediocrity and instill discipline in the system. He was speaking when he swore in the new chairman of the state civil service and board members. The governor adds that his administration will continue to prioritize workers' welfare in the state, insisting that corruption in the state civil service will soon be a thing of the past.
We are determined to continue to prioritize workers' welfare and ensure transparency and accountability.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. Let's begin with some of the stories on the issues of the Nigerian labor unions and what they are saying as regarding the negotiation regarding the minimum wage. The negotiation continues tonight as we speak. We understand that the team of the Nigerian Labor Union, the Trade Union Congress, and the federal government delegations are still meeting on the issues of over the full implementation of the new minimum wage. The meeting which deadlocked yesterday and continued today. The Joint Public Servants Negotiating Council had scheduled nationwide strike to take off today, but today's negotiation may just change the narrative if a truce is reached. The labor unions are demanding a 29% salary increase for officers in grade 7 to 14 and 24% for grade 15 to 17, but the federal government proposes 11% for officers on grade level 7 to 14 and 6.5% for officers on grade level 15 to 17. We understand that there might be some kind of agreement on what you're seeing on the screen. We're waiting to hear for a final and official word from the Labour and the federal government on this. Let's get to hear from one of the Labour leaders who was at that meeting and could give us a sense of what they're talking, because the implication of these meetings are that if they are not able to agree on a certain percentage to be on both sides, workers are going to be on industrial action. So to avert that strike, that's the reason why they're sitting on the table tonight. It's a 1 hour stretch of the program, so sit down and enjoy it. I have joining me one of the Labour leaders at the negotiating table, Comrade Issa Aremu. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Aremu, for joining us tonight. We understand that you stepped out briefly from that meeting to speak to us on this program. Thank you for taking that time out. Tell us, how far with the negotiation? What have you agreed on in your meeting?
Well, thank you so much. And let me also greet all our viewers. I think we have agreed that negotiation continues. And we have also agreed on the spirit of compromise, just exactly the same way we got the new minimum wage of 30,000 through the process of negotiation. I'm very sure we'll be able to also arrive at the wise outcome when it comes to consequential adjustment. So as you said, I just left the negotiating table just briefly to inform you that the negotiation continues. And don't also forget, this is the 5th national minimum wage that we're having in place. The first minimum wage was in 1981. So we've got through this road before. And that takes a lot of effort, a lot of negotiating skills to move from 18,000 to 30,000. I don't also forget that this minimum wage is for the entire nation as a whole, for all the workers, both in private and public sector. But the one that we are discussing here is about consequential adjustment. With respect to public service employees who are quite the critical mass, the large number of workers are there. But private sector, most of the companies have already negotiated, based on their collective agreement that they have put in place. They've already adjusted their wages accordingly. But the one we're focusing on is a consequential adjustment with the public service. So I'm optimistic that we'll definitely, come to an agreement in such a way that the consequential adjustment in public sector will be addressed.
So what is likely, are you getting to a midpoint now? Because of what the federal government said it can pay, because it has to also go into the spending plans of the federal government. And they did say that they were going to open their books to the labor union leaders to see what the nation is capable of paying. Has the federal government opened the books, and what did you find out?
Well, so, the opening of books, has always been part of the process of bargaining, collective bargaining. Don't forget that the new minimum wage was negotiated for almost about 18 months. President Muhammad Buhari commendably set up the tripartite committee, and we negotiated extensively. We got the data from Central Bank, Federal Office of Bureau of Statistics, of course, organized private sector, also gave their own data. Federal government was well represented, state government were all well represented. So opening of books has been part of the bargaining process. And this time around, it's the same thing about what should be the consequential adjustment. But before the details, you must also get the principle right. Don't forget that minimum wage is for largely workers, who are the bottom, ladder of the entire compensation structure. Of course, as we move up, those who are below, it has implication for those who are also up. So you need to have an adjustment. So in this one, you must talk about fairness. You must talk of equity. And to some extent, you could also of equality, but you also don't have to, you also have to make sure that you don't honestly widen up the gap. Secondly, you don't also make sure that those who are up are also stagnant. So it requires a lot of appropriate trade-off. A lot of numbers have been given out, and as at the time I came out to speak with you, definitely we are going to have just the way the NSA president, Comrade Ayuba Waba, who has been leading the negotiation on the part of labor, put it, definitely we are going to strike a balance, in a way that very soon we announce what the outcome of the negotiation is all about. But I want to tell you, Sheung, that get it right. Strike for us is not the end. It's just the means. The end is to improve the purchasing power of Nigerian workers, and everybody has agreed that we could do more with more compensation for the working people. If we want to improve on productivity, if we want to fight against corruption, workers have to be well paid, properly. And minimum wage is one key to it. But we also agree that beyond the minimum wage, it's always a 5-year cycle. We must also have proper collective bargaining machinery in the public sector so that they don't need to wait for this 5-year cycle before there are periodic reviews of wages. And from private sector, every 2 years we negotiate. I think we need to put all that kind of arrangement in the public sector in a way that we can have improvement in wages without this dramatized, negotiations.
That's the journey of the minimum wage after it was approved by the federal government. From January the 9th, when President Buhari set up inaugurated a technical committee to when the Senate passed the minimum wage, when the Presidential Technical Committee submitted the report to President Buhari, right up until today. And what we are hearing, 29% for grade level 7 to 14 is what the Labour wanted. But we are hearing that the Labour may have, and the federal government may have agreed on to 20%, and from grade level 15 to 17, the directorate cadre, they may have agreed to 13.5%. How true is this? Because the good news is that there might not be strike action, isn't it?
I'm not hearing you.
Okay, let me show the question again, Mr. Aremu. We understand that the Labour wants 29% salary increase for grade level 7 to 14, and 24% from grade level 15 to 17. But we understand that what it might come to tonight, at the end of that negotiation, is perhaps there's a midpoint where the Labour and federal government may have agreed to from 7 to 14 level at 20%, and from grade level 15 to 17, 13.5%. Is there anything far from that?
Yeah, I think maybe we should rather wait for what the agreement will be, which will be duly signed, rather than what we hear. But you also know that the movement from 18,000 to 30,000, I mean, that's close to almost about 60% increase for even those who are level 1 to 7. So, I mean, when you are talking of 7 to 14 and in that order, once you're wondering some of those figures you are bringing about, of course, a lot of figures will be put on the table about what we deserve, what we want. But I've told you that we want to ensure equity so that those whose minimum wage is meant for have benefit of it, so that they move from, starvation wage to, survival wage of now 30,000. But we also know that there must be incremental adjustment for those who are from level 7 to 14, 15 to 17. But I'm not going to tell you beyond what the agreement we are going to put in place. And the figures will be announced for you to see. But I assure you that definitely we are going to strike a balance, in a way that will reflect the need of the working people across the ladder. Then we reflect the reality of the economy. We also reflect what will make a worker to be productive, as the case may be. But rather than listen to what you hear, I think it's important when we finish, the NSC leadership will announce formally what the collective agreement is all about, which will be signed by all the parties.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. We'll wait for the closure of that meeting. But tell Nigerians that they give Nigerians assurance of what you're saying tonight and be clear, Mr. Aremu, to us, please. Are you saying that there might not be strike after tonight? That from the meeting that you were in, it looks all clear. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, Shehu, I've already told you that strike is not the end for us. We are not strike excited. We are rather excited that we have a good outcome of good improvement in the pay of our members. And once we get that one today, of course, the worst scenario is over, and we have the best scenario, which is that there will be win-win for all the bargainers at this negotiating table.
Okay, so before I allow you to go, Mr. Aremu, one of the biggest fears for a lot of workers who are not federal government workers, especially those ones who are employed by the state government, is the ability of some of the states to pay this minimum wage. Some states have said they will pay. But what are the fears of the labor leaders or the labor on what the states can bring to the table, and the fear of some of these states who are who are not capable of paying the minimum wage?
No way to be ashamed. There is nobody, no state government can say it's not capable. I've told you, and you have already given, you presented a very good template. We had negotiation for effectively 18 months in these countries. Governors were well represented. Governors forum, they have about 6 governors at that negotiating table. So we are not renegotiating. It's not time for implementation. Minimum wage is a law now. Any employer, whether private or public sector employer, including governors who refuse to obey this, they are perpetrating illegality. They must implement it. And Shehu, let me also remind you, there are progressive governors, or put it this way, governors who are enlightened that they must pay their workers very well. They have already announced the commitment to pay. Governor El-Rufai of Kaduna has already even made provision for this in this budget, just like the federal government has made provision for it. All governors are banded to do so. I also had Lagos State government, they will even pay more than 30,000. I think we should, refer to governors who are law-abiding, governors who are, who respect the spirit of the law as it affects the working people. So this is a national minimum wage law, and I think exactly what the federal government is doing is expected that all the state governors should be doing with their respective unions to make sure that we implement the new minimum wage. And let me tell you, it's smart economics, it's good economics, because the pay of the workers are meant to buy goods and services, which we turn the economy around. There's no way we can recover from this slow growth unless you increase the purchasing power of the working people. And if you do so, I mean, those of us from the private sector knows very well that it is what you pay the workers they used to buy the basic goods that will turn the economy around. So for me, I think we are not renegotiating, and there's no fear about any state governor not implementing it. Any governor that doesn't implement it will definitely face the consequence of the law and, of course, the wrath of their workers. And we have the capability to make sure that we don't only get agreement, we must implement the agreement, as the case may be. And Shehu have said so. This is the 5th national minimum wage. We've done it before, and it will be done again. In a way that all employers will be able to respect the spirit of the new minimum wage law.
We hope for the best for all Nigerian workers and the best for the Nigerian economy. Thank you so much, Mr. Isa Aremu, one of the labor leaders who has been sitting on the negotiating table. We allow you and release you now to quickly go back to that negotiating table and get the best for Nigerians. Thank you so much for appearing on the program tonight. Well, we take a break, and when we come back, we look at the austerity measures of President Muhammadu Buhari. How far will that go? Is that a kind of cut on cost of governance that Nigerians are hoping for? We'll discuss that when we return from this break, everyone. Join us again.